Well, welcome. We're happy to have this meeting and this webinar to talk about riding the storm, which is about protecting yourself from and your business from disaster, which includes business continuity and disaster recovery. And we're going to get into a lot of the details on how to best withstand situations like that. And with us today, we have Mr. Dan Mallard with IronEdge Group. He is a account manager like myself that oversees a lot of our clients to help them with these kinds of challenges. And also, we have a great partner of ours, Leif Fortson with Axcient, who we trust over many, many years to provide solutions for organizations that address these kind of challenges that the organizations have with an easy kind of backup and recovery solution. So we'll be talking about all these kind of things to help you guys understand what your businesses might face and how you would address responding to them. So with that, let's jump into things. So business interruptions. Obviously, we'll talk about the differences between business continuity and disaster recovery. But the most common types of issues are downtime to your infrastructure. And these are everything from power supplies to hard drive failures to human error. Oftentimes, you'll see engineers will maybe apply a bad patch or something along maintenance where things go down and you need to be back up and recovered quite quickly. Also, understanding how long a business can be down without some of these systems is important to understand the recovery. And we'll give you a couple of examples. So one of the most common types of interruptions in this day and age is a security incident, right? Where you may have a virus or a crypto virus that may affect your environment, and then potentially natural disasters. Obviously in Texas or in Florida, where both Leif and Dan and I exist, hurricanes are quite common, right? And so these type of natural disasters, whether it's hurricanes or fires or anything like that, may impact you. Now, Leif, in your experience, those types of natural disasters or otherwise, what are some examples that you can think of that might be something that a lot of our listeners and watchers are aware of?
Yeah, I think when it comes to being in more high-risk areas such as Texas, Florida, Louisiana, even, I can actually recall some recent cases with partners that have leveraged Axcient, where they had to kind of move that risk from their data center over to Axcient because we have when it comes to security standards, we have SOC 2, we have those standards in place with our cloud. They were able to leverage the tool to get back up and running with their clients. So, for example, when the Hurricane Ida touched down in Louisiana not too long ago, they had quite a bit of their clients impacted without power, without internet for almost 4 days. Luckily, they actually installed the tool prior to that, and they worked with the Axcient support to get up and running as quick as they could, just within 30 minutes of that phone call. Leveraging, playbooks or run books within Axcient, which is pretty much an orchestrated set of virtual machines to get their infrastructure up and running and to have that business continuity with their clients.
Yeah.
So, and going forward, what makes it even better with those run books and the virtual office technology is now they're able to perform disaster recovery testing with much more ease and on a regular basis. So if they have any concern going forward, they can give that reassurance and say, hey, look, we actually did some testing and we were able to successfully get that back up and running as quick as we can.
Yeah. So I think it's probably worth kind of mentioning or differentiating between what is business continuity versus disaster recovery. Business continuity is, typically speaking, it revolves around an information system in your network, right? An information system can be your email system, it could be your phone system, it could be your file server, it could be your ERP, your accounting system. Each one of those is an information system, and if one of those goes down, you need to understand what it's going to take your organization to get it back up and going and how quickly it needs to be up and going, right? So that allows your business to continue, right? Business continuity. So if a system goes down, how quickly can you recover from that system being down to be back up and operational within a certain amount of time, right? So that's business continuity. Disaster recovery, as Leif was talking about, often revolves around your physical presence, your office locations. So if your office burns up or gets blown away by a hurricane, understanding how you can recover from a physical disruption to your business, not necessarily an information system. So knowing the differences between those two allows you to plan accordingly on how you're going to be able to recover from each of those systems. So we're going to dive a little bit closer into business continuity, how to understand the importance and how quickly you need to recover, and what that might look like. And Dan is certainly very experienced in understanding that risk and how you go about deciding those factors.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. And this is something Patrick and I really like to do for our clients as a consultative piece of our account management, but specifically related to this example, Patrick or I will come in and perform business impact analyses on different applications used within the environment. And the goal with performing a business impact analysis is kind of to understand your who, what, when, where, sort of at an application standpoint, with the end result of producing sort of a guideline of if this system is affected, how long will it take to recover, and how to best execute that in a needed scenario. And that's sort of the output that comes out of it. They're really, really fun to do because you reveal a lot of things about your applications that you may not have known before you started the process. And it's things like you may have an accounting system that we come in and we perform a business impact analysis, and you think, okay, accounting, that's people getting paid, and that's your employees getting paid, and you receiving money and money going out. Well, then you might find out through the business impact analysis that this thing also manages your shipping system. And you would think, oh, well, we have to produce our goods. We're okay if our accounting system's down. We'll go back to pieces of paper and write things down and do whatever. Well, without the business impact analysis, you may not have known that system generates all of your shipping data and has your shipping databases and has the way you pay for shipping and all this other stuff in it. And in a situation where the accounting system is affected, you've already kind of understood what it actually does. Now, what I said the end result was, which is this understanding of how long it takes to recover a system and how much time you need to recover it. That's very, very valuable. And once you have that data, you can then create disaster recovery plans and similar business the plans that recover your business. And you understand how long that stuff actually takes and what it will affect if one of these systems goes down. So it's very powerful. They're fun to do. And it's one of these things, and I say this a lot in these meetings, it's the journey of doing it, not necessarily the destination that is valuable. In this case, yeah, it's valuable to know how long it takes to recover a system, but all of the things that you unearth getting to that are incredibly valuable as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And what it also provides is, because obviously money is not limitless, right? So right. Oftentimes when we go through these processes, the stakeholders or the departments will say, well, we can't have any downtime with this system, right?
Zero downtime.
Zero downtime. Which is common, right? Like they can't do it. Like if they have any downtime and they don't have any alternative means of operating, then they're bleeding money, right? And so it's always a balance to understand, well, if they can't have zero downtime, certainly technology can provide that, but there's a cost attached to it, right? So you may say, I want zero downtime. Well, if that's the case, then we have to have hot sites, and that may cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they're like, well, maybe we don't need zero downtime. Maybe we can get away with maybe a day or two downtime, right? So balancing what the requirements are versus the cost that might give them that solution is always a challenge from a technology standpoint. And we go back to our trusted partner, Axcient here. are the solutions that we've really sort of leaned on over the past 10 years or so, really because it is a cost balance, right? So you could do hot sites and you can do all these very expensive solutions, but they may not meet the budget needs, right, of the organization. So having a balance of products that give you that sort of quick recovery time in a way that doesn't cost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, Leif, let me ask you a question with regards to how those products can provide you guys a quick recovery. Can you talk to us about how the technology works with local backups and cloud backups and the ability to kind of recover quickly using your systems?
Sure. With Axcient X360 Recover, it's, we pride ourselves in being very flexible to that, based on each client has different sets of requirements, as you were mentioning. And especially if there's budget as a concern, that flexibility is even more important. So, whether it's traditional backup appliances or backups that you want to leverage. So if speed or network bandwidth is an issue, that's typically something that you would utilize. So if you want the faster recovery times, and that can be a concern with the network bandwidth, that's something typically those clients would leverage. If that's not an issue, they can go more towards the direct to cloud, which kind of bypasses having a local appliance and that kind of cost that is associated with a traditional appliance. And you can also take a leverage of that, you're based on the backup strategy that you utilize of having multiple copies of that data, that redundancy that you need to ensure that if something goes awry, whether it's a natural disaster, ransomware, whatever it may be, you can quickly be able to recover fast in both scenarios. And that's all made possible with Virtual Office, which is basically a way to ensure business continuity. So, for example, those last snapshots that you had for those backups, you can quickly virtualize those, within minutes, if not too much longer than that. Depending on the size of the data that you're working with, and get the business up and running, right? So maybe there's something that you need to do, and whether it's a fire that occurred and kind of made things impossible, you can get the business up and running so they can continue to get the staff working, maybe payroll, whatever it may be. And then also I mentioned previously with runbooks, right? If there's a certain infrastructure, certain application tool that requires a series of virtual machines to be spun up at one time, that kind of helps expedite that. To kind of touch on more of the direct to cloud approach, where you're kind of bypassing budget as a concern, you can actually leverage what they call local cache, which actually stores a portion of that data into a repository behind, whether it's a NAS device or a network file share, that securely, and be able to quickly recover from the cloud. So instead of going direct, pulling directly from the cloud, you can leverage that local cache to speed that recovery time, so you can get that business continuity up and running and recovered as fast as you can. And those are some of the approaches that partners have probably been taking advantage of because of the budget concerns. And also bandwidth and internet over the years have drastically improved to where that has made that possible.
Yeah, that's great. Dan, you were going to say something?
Yeah, it used to be completely cost prohibitive to rely on a solution that utilized bandwidth, both traditional, like in the ground services, and also cellular services. But as Leif kind of alluded to, that stuff's gotten way cheaper. Bandwidth has gotten cheaper in both modalities of it, and we can rely on things now that we probably couldn't have done 10 years ago, which is why we had the on-prem solutions. Number one, they were faster, but then you didn't have to exchange all this data over your internet connection, because that would have been cost prohibitive to have a large amount of data moving around any given time. Because if you're not paying for the biggest pipe, then it takes forever to get all the data out. And as the ability, bandwidth has gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, it has made the ability to operate a virtual environment in the cloud that's being used and being leveraged by different people. It's made that more agreeable. So it's been really fundamentally a big shift in backup technologies and what anybody can use. And always on internet too. Like 15, 20 years ago, you could have a backup infrastructure in the internet but you really couldn't go everywhere to get to it. Now, anywhere you go to a national park and they have Wi-Fi. So that's really made Axcient sort of what I call their second tier solution, their cloud solution, really, really attractive for us.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked around sort of the details of it. I think it's important to drive the point home that from a business continuity standpoint, we're talking about being up and going. Like if a system goes down, being up and going in the matter of a couple of hours, right? You could bring a system back online from a backup image within a couple of hours. Oftentimes that's within the typical downtime requirements of any system, right? If you can bring up a system within 2, 3, or 4 hours, not days, that is a critical component for business continuity, right? So by having a solution like that gives you continuity in the matter of a couple of hours is a huge deal, right? And the same goes for disaster recovery. If a physical site is down, and you need to leverage these same backups that have been pushed off to the cloud and have a virtual office, that product now gives you both business continuity and disaster recovery capabilities by having one solution. Being back up online within a couple of hours, as well as having a full site back online within a few hours as well, gives a company quick recovery times in either of these situations. I think one of the things that's common for any organization in this day and age is really this move to the cloud, right? So having their data that's either in a hosted environment, Office 365 is a very popular email solution. Azure is a popular hosted solution for Microsoft. What people often don't think of is the protection of that data. One example is, I think, Rackspace in the past couple of months had a big security crypto event where all of their Exchange servers, I think, because they weren't patched, they had ransomware applied to all their servers, and that data was not recoverable. And they basically told their clients, like, sorry, we don't have your data. And so people don't think about the safety of their data in the cloud. Office 365, OneDrive, SharePoint, Azure. And how do you go about protecting that? Well, again, these products that Axcient provides do provide you the backup of that data. And Microsoft often tells you, look, if this data is important to you, you need to have a backup of your own information, because they don't guarantee it. Like if something happens to their systems, your data, you have to take it upon yourself to protect it. So
I've got an interesting thing I want to add on there, Patrick, and kind of give Amy, our producer, a soundbite here. So what was really interesting when COVID first started happening and people all started working remote, a lot of my clients, especially the smaller clients, hadn't converted over to cloud infrastructure yet. And the act of working remotely through COVID created a new set of IT challenges where people had to be able to work from anywhere. So they had their email from anywhere. They had to, access their file infrastructure for anywhere, so on and so forth. So a lot of people in every industry, everywhere, if they weren't on Office 365, they moved to Office 365. Of my client base, every client I have is on Office 365, and a lot of those moved during 2020 and 2021. Well, what that did was it created an environment where, say, you used to have an old Exchange server that you had in your closet, and it was your mail server. And really the only way somebody could attack that server was to know its unique IP address or the unique OA name of it, or something very, very unique to your organization. And then somebody could attack it and they could potentially leverage it. Well, with everybody moving to the cloud into Office 365, if you want to attack Office 365, you go to office.com. That's it. So it's made it much, much simpler of an entry point into everyone's environment. So there's this balance of flexibility versus it's changed the target to a different type of target, and people need to be aware of that. which is what Patrick's sort of tying this all back to. Well, your email's now in Office 365 where somebody can hit it from anywhere. They don't have to know, they just need to know your email address. Then they can start attacking office.com. Well, being that that's a different target, it's a much more serious target and people can get to it maybe a little bit easier than they used to be able to do. How do we put layers on the onion, and how do we make things more secure, and how do we protect this data, and how do we ensure that the data in that system is backed up by a distinctly separate third party? That's what Patrick's kind of getting at. But it's very, very important information for anybody making IT decisions. They need to understand what the risk is there and why it's a newer risk if they haven't been in Office 365 before. So I just wanted to throw that in there for you, Patrick, because I find myself explaining that a lot.
Well, now, Leif, in the Azure environment, right? Like the data that the servers and such, that you can back up that data as well, and it's completely separate from the Microsoft environment, right?
Correct. Yeah, we the direct or the Axcient X360 Recover agent sits on that protected system and will replicate over to the Axcient cloud. Mm-hmm. So in the case of the downtime or any disruptions that Microsoft has, you can quickly still be able to recover or ensure that you minimize data loss as much as possible. Because like you mentioned previously with Microsoft and their terms and conditions, that they're not liable for any disruptions that occur and cause possible data loss. So they recommend having third-party tools
absolutely
in these type of events.
Yeah, that's one of the most important things. There's people ask me all the time, what are the most important things I need to do in Office 365 to make sure that it's wisely used? Well, you need to have multi-factor turned on. And what I always say, number 2, is you need a distinctly separate third-party backup. IronEdge, we sell that as part of our core services, right? You just get it as something you get with us. And then we leverage Axcient to be transparent is what we do, but you get that with services with us. But those are the 2 most important things. They're both equally as important.
Yeah. Even, I mean, because obviously Microsoft provides their own backups in the Azure environment, right? And those are perfectly capable, but there's something to be said about keeping all of your eggs in one basket, right?
That's right.
I won't go too much into detail, but even in the past week, there was this state-sponsored vulnerability where it leveraged the global admin account that's created as part of a hybrid AD sync solution, like using older versions of AD sync.
Yeah.
And it got it by accessing this global admin account that had unfettered access to the entire Microsoft environment, is able to destroy or damage the Azure environment, access your backups in the Azure environment, all the data, 365, anything that had access as a global admin, basically destroyed that information, right? And having that ability to have this data in a separate environment, which is called air-gapped, you have a completely separate environment that has no access to the internal environment, protects you from those types of situations.
It's logically and physically separate. I want to say one thing too, for anybody that's listening to this that uses the Google platform for their mail and for their file storage and all that stuff. I have one client that does that out of my book of business, and Axcient works for that too. Yep. So I want to make sure, I want to point that out, that just because you're not a Microsoft shop, you're a Google shop. All of this applies to you as well.
One thing I wanted to also add specifically around, taking backups is that just because you have a backup doesn't mean that backup is actually good and you can recover from that backup. So there's additional processes that actually we run against those backups, specifically the auto verify process, which ensures that a boot VM that it actually boots up, and we can take a boot VM screenshot to ensure that yes, this thing is up. The necessary services have also started and is running. There's a heartbeat, basic communications are there as well, and that's all made possible because of the underlying technology with chain-free technology, that the snapshot, it can be quickly virtualized and a quicker time than a chain-based backup. There's additional, depending if it's a traditional appliance, if the auto verify is running on the appliance versus direct to cloud, but we also have advanced checks that goes beyond those initial verification process, and we do a check disk operation to ensure each volume within the protected system the data, the actual integrity of those file systems are good. And there's some auto healing that follows up if in an event that something does not check out correctly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out, that, you know, that's just that added insurance that ensures that your backups can be recovered.
It's really a valuable tool because I have clients that fall under compliance issues and audit issues. And multiple times a year, I have different, you know, maybe a third-party auditing team or a consultant auditor or something like that. They'll come in, they go, basically prove that the backups work, right? And so for all of my clients that use the Axcient infrastructure, I basically will produce screenshots that show that this virtual machine has been fired up and tested monthly, or I'll be able to show the logs that the system creates. It says this was tested and this was tested and this was tested. It's very, very powerful. And I can't think of a time off the top of my head where I ever had any trouble with any of that. It just works great. It does a good job of proving it's doing what we're selling.
Yeah. Yeah. And we didn't mention it, but you can certainly lean on their expertise, their engineers. You don't necessarily need to be an expert on backup and recovery efforts, right? Like if something happens and you need help to get back on your feet, they're a great partner, which is why we've loved them for the past decade of business together. That allows us to lean on them to make sure that they have the expertise, they have the experts that help recovery efforts in the event that something should happen. Which is why, again, whether you're talking about being back up on your feet from a continuity standpoint within a couple of hours, or having site resiliency with an office in the cloud, or having protection of the data that someone else owns, like Google or Microsoft 365 or Azure, all of these types of solutions all kind of boil down into one great product that allows you to check all those boxes. Which is why we strongly suggest either looking at your own environment, seeing where your weaknesses are, and figuring out how, in the event that something like this should happen, how you would go about recovering it, how quickly you can do it, and most importantly, how cost effective it's going to be, right? You can't throw millions of dollars towards recovery efforts. So putting these solutions in place to prevent having weeks of downtime and loss of money from that downtime is critical for you to really realize, and being able to be recovered from those efforts and done it quickly without a ton of cost is a huge solution for your organization.
Yeah, sets them up for success, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it really does.
So yeah, that's what we have to talk about this afternoon. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Leif or Dan?
No, not particularly. I'd say that, since Axcient joined us here today, we want to thank them. They've been a good partner for ours for a long time. If you're interested in what they do, certainly look them up. I believe they are a service and a platform provided only by managed service providers. So if you have a managed services provider and you feel like that they have not provided you an appropriate solution related to on-prem backups, cloud-based backups, Office 365 backups, and that type of thing, maybe Google Axcient, see what they do, see how they work, and throw that to your current managed services provider.
Very good. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Leif, Dan, again, always a pleasure. So you all have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining us.